Hey guys, Sue's here back with another keto dinner recipes video. Got some low carb meal ideas for you this week. All the things that we cooked up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We make these every single week to give you a little motivation and inspiration to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep on. And let's get into the video. First up, we made this awesome white chicken chili. I really think it was more of like a combo in between a soup and a stew. So to start with, in a large crock pot, I have 2 pounds of chicken breast. I just used 3 really large chicken breast here. Put a little sea salt and a little ground black pepper on them, as well as 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, and just the chili con carne. And then we're going to do some mild diced green chilies. They recommend using 9 ounces in the original recipe. We're just going to use this 7-ounce can, and I did drain these really well. And I'm just sticking those right on top of the chicken. Then I'm adding a half a cup of low sodium chicken broth. And the recipe does recommend cooking this low and slow for 7 hours. We don't have time for that. We're going to do high for 4 hours and then make part 2. So after that's done, just taking the lid off. Now I'm throwing caution to the wind and using a hand mixer in the ceramic crock pot to go ahead and shred my chicken. I was super careful not to bump the sides or the bottom of the crock pot, but I would recommend you actually taking the chicken out if you're going to use the mixer to shred it, or just using a couple forks and shredding it inside of the crock pot. Now after I got that mixed, just pop the lid on, stuck that to the side, and over in a large pot over medium heat, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of butter that I just chopped up, as well as 4 ounces of room temperature cream cheese. To that, I'm adding a half a cup of sour cream, as well as a half a cup of heavy whipping cream, and I'm just going to get my whisk in here and stir and melt this until it's all combined and nice and creamy. And then I'm just pouring that directly over our shredded chicken, and I'm going to get in here and just mix this together really well. And then I'm just going to pop the lid on it and let it cook for 1 more hour on low. And here it is plated up with a little bit of fresh cilantro, a tiny bit of chopped red onion, and some shredded pepper jack cheese. And I did shred it myself to save on carbs. This was absolutely delicious. It stores and reheats really well. This would also be great to freeze the leftovers and have that later. Chris was asking for more meal prep and casserole ideas. So this is definitely a recipe that is great for doing meal prep ahead of time, as well as this spinach artichoke egg casserole recipe that we made here. Of course, I will link the original recipe down below. So to start with, in a large bowl, I have 16 large eggs cracked, and I'm just adding a 1/4 of a cup heavy whipping cream to this instead of milk as the original recipe called for. And I'm whisking this together really, really well. Now to this, I'm going to add some artichoke hearts. The recipe called for a 14-ounce drained jar of artichoke hearts. I just have 12 ounces here that I took out of a super large jar. Always buy them at Costco. They come like marinated in a little bit of seasonings and olive oil. And I am just pulling those apart, separating the leaves to add them to our egg mixture, and then like the core nuggets at the bottom, which I guess are like the more heart part. I don't know. I don't really know the anatomy of an artichoke. I guess I should look that up. Comment down below if you know. I am getting rid of some of those because it just depends on how much you like artichokes, on how much you want to add, really. To that, I have this lumpy looking, looks kind of gross when you do it like this, but it's 10 ounces of chopped spinach that was frozen. I just thawed it out, drained the excess water out of it in a colander, and then I took the rest of it and I put it in paper towels and just kind of roll it and squeeze a couple times, and that does the job. I can't stand getting the excess water out of spinach, but it is very tasty. So I'm just breaking that apart and adding it to our mixture as well. And I'm just mixing those together a little before adding a cup of white cheddar cheese. And again, I shredded this myself to save on carbs. I'm also adding a half a cup of just regular cheap grated Parmesan cheese and a 1/4 of a cup of shaved onion that I just sliced really thinly and then chopped a tiny bit. Half a teaspoon of minced garlic, not quite a half a teaspoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of sea salt, and about a half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper, as well as I did add a 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper. The recipe didn't call for that, but I always add ground black pepper to everything. Now I'm just gonna mix that all together really well. Getting a 9 by 13 baking dish, spraying it with a little olive oil cooking spray. I'm just gonna pour my whole mixture into that. Then I have a half a cup of ricotta cheese here. Always make sure you double check your carbs in your ricotta because some of it is astronomical and some of it's extremely low carb. And if you've been around here for a while, you hear me say that all the time. If you're new here, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our weekly videos. So I'm just dolloping this ricotta onto this casserole and trying to just break it apart into as many little, as the recipe says, pockets of ricotta as I can. And then I'm just getting my spoon and kind of spreading each of those apart and kind of pressing them down into our casserole. Popping this whole thing into a 350-degree oven for 35 minutes. This is what it looks like when it comes out. Look at those awesome ooey gooey pockets of melted ricotta. What I love about this recipe is it's perfect if you and your partner or another member of your household are both eating low carb, following a keto diet. This is perfect for meal prep, and it'll get both of you through your weekly breakfast/lunches. Absolutely delicious, stores and reheats well. So Chris, I hope this would be a good one. If you don't like artichokes, obviously you could mess around with those ingredients. Next up, we have a 1-pot sausage and slaw skillet. And again, I adjusted this recipe to make it lower carb than the original. But to start with, in a large pot over high heat, I added 5 cups of water, brought it to a boil, and then I'm adding my hot Italian sausage. I use turkey sausage for mine, hot Italian turkey sausage, and I'm using 5 links because that's what was in my pack. Now, once we get that in there, we're putting the lid on, cutting the heat off, and just leaving it for 7 minutes. Now I'm going to drain the excess water out and bringing it back to the stovetop. I'm adding like a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil to my pan, and then we're just going to brown our Italian sausage on all sides till it gets to temperature. So I'm just using some tongs to kind of keep an eye on that and turning it until it gets nice and brown. Pulling those out, removing them to a separate dish. I'm adding a couple more tablespoons of olive oil, cutting my heat up to medium, and I am just trying to scrape some of those bits off. Now this recipe called for a whole large onion, and I'm not ever going to put a whole large onion in any keto recipe, so I just did a half of a medium onion, and that did cut down on carbs in this recipe significantly. And I'm just sprinkling those with a little bit of salt, and also adding 1 medium-sized red pepper, bell pepper, that I just chopped up. And we're just going to saute this together for a few minutes till it starts to soften before adding 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, as well as a half a teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of oregano, 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And again, just continuing to stir this around till it's nice and soft. Now for this recipe, we are going to be using a slaw mix that's pretty interesting. This bag is from Costco. It says sweet kale mix. It does come with cranberries and pumpkin seeds and dressing. Those are packaged separately. We're obviously not going to use those, but we want it for the broccoli stalks, the cabbage, the kale, and the Brussels sprouts that are in it. So I'm just going to add this whole bag to our pot and stirring from the bottom. I'm bringing those hot peppers and onions to the top, and that's just going to help our greens mixture kind of wilt down. Adding a half a teaspoon of sea salt to this, as well as a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and continuing to stir and cook that before adding our Italian sausage back to the pan. And I am going to give that a nice stir, and I'm just going to pop my lid on there for a few minutes and let that continue cooking. Just about 5 more minutes probably. And here it is plated up. I just served 1 Italian sausage over the mixture. This was the first time I think I've ever knowingly had what's called broccoli stalks. Comment down below if you know the answer to this, but I really enjoyed them, and I don't usually enjoy the stalky part of the broccoli, so I'm wondering if they take regular full-size broccoli stalks and like put them through some type of shredder, or are these like baby broccoli stalks that are like broccoli shoots or something? I don't know. Comment down below if you do. I'm sure I could Google it, but anyhow, this was awesome. Also great for meal prepping your lunches for the week. Last up this week, another special request. We've been sprinkling in some salads here and there, so this is the last one we'll be doing for a while. Request from Sylvia. So to start with, we're going to make our dressing for this steak fajita salad by adding a half a cup total with extra virgin olive oil. 1/3 of a cup, I did freshly squeezed lime juice, but you could totally just do bottled. A teaspoon of ground cumin, a half a teaspoon chili powder, a half a teaspoon kosher salt, and just a little dash of cayenne pepper. And I am whisking that together really well. And then we're just going to stick that to the side and go ahead and mix together a half a teaspoon of ground cumin, a half a teaspoon paprika, a half a teaspoon sea salt, and 1/4 teaspoon pepper, and just mixing that all together with our measuring spoon for the rub for a steak. Now for a steak, we're using a pound of skirt steak. You could use flank steak for this. I like using skirt steak because it cooks up quicker, and we're just seasoning both sides and rubbing that down. And meanwhile on the stovetop, I do have a 10-inch inch cast iron skillet. I've been letting heat about 10 minutes until it started to smoke slightly, and I'm adding my steak to it, letting it cook undisturbed for 4 minutes. Flipping it to the other side, we're gonna do the same here. We're aiming for about 130 internal temp because I want it medium rare to medium. And after we cook it for 4 minutes on that side, I'm gonna flip it over and do about a minute more on each side. I did pull out a meat thermometer to check it, and it's more medium than it is medium rare, but hey, that's what happens sometimes. Removing this from the pan, I'm just gonna stick it to the side on a cutting board and let it rest. Add a couple tablespoons extra virgin olive oil to our cast iron. I do have this down to medium heat. I cook the steak on medium high. To this, I am adding a half of a medium red onion. For this recipe, they called for a lot of onion and like 2 large peppers. Again, I cut this in half because I wanted to lower the carb count even more. So I'm just using 1 medium yellow bell pepper with that and just sauteing those together in that olive oil. I am adding a little bit of ground black pepper. I had somebody comment recently about me using canned pepper. I like fresh ground pepper, but hey, when I'm cooking during the week, we're grabbing what's easy, right? Add a little bit more sea salt as well. Let those cook down until they're nice and soft and a little charred. My steak's been resting. I'm just gonna slice it. Keep in mind, we're making enough here for 4 servings of salad, so we're gonna portion that out accordingly. To get it plated up, I have a little bit of chopped romaine lettuce in a salad dish, and I'm just adding 1/4 of that steak, as well as a little tongue full of peppers and onions. Make sure you measure really well if you're just starting out. Macros are really important. I would lay off the peppers and onions. Adding a little bit of sliced avocado and 2 cherry tomatoes cut in half, and then just spooning some of that dressing over it. And this dressing is quite tart with the lime juice, and I forgot about that when I was making this, or I would have probably put like 1 tablespoon less. So there you go, guys. That's this week's keto dinner recipes video. We do have video coming up next week, a special request from Joe. We'll be making some stuff with the palmini noodles and testing out different kinds of those, as well as some Thanksgiving favorites recipes that Lady Lovely had asked for, and those will be coming up soon too. So make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss any of those. As always, pin this, share this, like this, comment all of your suggestions and questions and any type of video ideas you'd like to see from us in the future. And until next time, bye guys.